Wagner, CEO of Aegis Incorporated and the director of the Help Philippine Schools Foundation on Clark Field in the Philippines, where I was stationed as a young U.S. Marine many years ago.
My name is Harry K. Thomas Jr., and I had the honor and pleasure of serving as the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines from 2010 to 2013.
No two people on the planet could be more different than Harry and me. Some folks we know even refer to us as the real odd couple, and that we are.
My good friend Bob Wagner and I decided to make this video because of our concern for the current issues plaguing the global community. Bob and I are different in so many ways, but we are the same because we share our great concern for our fellow man and woman.
In reaction to the demonstrations happening in the U.S. and around the world, we decided to make a little video on how America and the rest of the world might step back to take a new look at what is causing all the tension and provide some perspective from our experiences that could offer solutions.
One of my favorite songs is My Pretty Brown Pinay by the great Filipino-American jazz singer Charmaine Clamore. I love the great poet Paul Laurence Dunbar's essay, My Soul Has Grown Deep Like Rivers. Ending colorism and racism in our time will not happen easily or soon. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. prayed for a colorblind global community, but he did not intend that race be ignored. Dr. King understood that we cannot end racism without accepting race as a social construct. One cannot claim to be colorblind whether we are American or Asian, as that well-intended term ignores identity and rejects the injustices faced because of the color or shade of our skin. Dr. Jose Rizal's brilliance is celebrated and universally acknowledged. But were he alive today, would he be discounted because of his skin tone?
When I was 7 years old, my father, who was then a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, took my mother and I on a trip to visit Grandma in Miami, Florida. It was my first flight in a commercial aircraft, so I was extremely excited. Mom and I sat behind Dad as there were only 2 seats on either side in the old Martin 404. As was common during that era, Dad was in uniform, sitting next to another Air Force officer, a major. Shortly before we began taxiing, Dad suddenly got up, came back to me and said, "Let's switch." I remember Mom making facial expressions of protest and saying, "Reg, what are you doing?" We ignored her, and I plopped into the already warm aisle seat next to the major while I listened to the muffled sounds of quarrel behind me. My father was a Jew from New York City, Mom a Southern Baptist from Atlanta. The smiling major I was looking up to at my left was as black as a starless night. My mother's deep South cultural instincts had kicked in, and she was making a fuss. I had never seen an African American before. Dad knew it was important that I learn about how some people may look different on the outside. We were all mere humans on the inside. Major Jansen, that's correct, I'll never forget his name, and I had a wonderful conversation over the ensuing 4 hours. It was a defining point in my life. My mother didn't speak to my father for the next 2 days.
We know the negative impact of having one's race, color, or skin tone criticized by racists, colorists, or all too often a member of one's own family. It causes people to internalize inferiority. This devaluing of one's humanity is connected to shame, embarrassment, and resentment regarding the person's identity, and can often lead to mental and physical challenges. We must see and acknowledge color and skin tone differences if we are to work jointly for inclusion, justice, and a better way for all people. Bias in many cases results from historical context shaped by structures and practices We must study history, its influence and consequences if we are to end skin tone and racial discrimination. It may be difficult to combat, but beliefs, stereotypes, jokes, and tales that have become part of the cultural lore must be confronted and ended. Power and financial differences are often at the heart of intergroup tensions and must be dealt with if behaviors are to change in significant ways.
Many years later, after joining the U.S. Marines, I was invited to spend Christmas leave at a fellow Jarhead's family home in 1980, ironically, in Miami. The day after arriving, a huge riot broke out all over the city over the acquittal of cops who had killed a black man, Arthur McDuffie, the year before. My friend's family home was right on the edge of Coconut Grove, where most of the African Americans lived at the time and the epicenter of unrest. So he and I were forced to spend a few days and nights on the front and back porches, armed to the teeth, of course, to keep the place from being burned to the ground. On the second day, some rioters trundled by on foot, saw us in our hardened defensive positions with U.S. Marine t-shirts on, and shouted, "N-word, what the hell you doing with that cracker?" Sergeant Alfonso Herrera, a black Cuban refugee and my brother in battle, yelled back with his drill instructor's voice, "Ain't no crackers and N-words here, you son of a bitch. All you see here are green Marines. Now move along or get some. What's your choice?" It saddened us to learn that McDuffie was a former Marine. After reading up on what the cops had done to him, I couldn't believe they were let off by an all-white jury in Tampa. How it was possible for that trial to be moved to Tampa in the first place will always remain a mystery to me.
Many are uncomfortable with people they perceive to be different. Some do not realize that discrimination is culturally influenced. We must look at ourselves, change behaviors, and engage honestly with those perceived to be different. To improve relations and ensure equality, opportunities for positive, equal interaction among all of our brothers and sisters representing different racial, ethnic, or skin tone groups must be institutionalized. These interactions work best when cooperative activities are organized in the workplace, in the schoolyards, and in our sacred houses of worship to ensure that people from differing cultures and races contribute equally to tasks and are recognized and rewarded for their success and given opportunities to lead and mentor.
For some unknowable reason, we continue to face off along racial lines, not having learned anything from the sins and achievements of the past. Today, social media and a partisan, invasive online press are driving the insanity to heights beyond belief, egging the combatants on by demanding more viral videos, more clicks, more likes, and above all, more angry tweets. Whites dig in, insisting there is no longer any systemic racism, and blacks insist whites refuse to acknowledge their genetic prejudices. We find ourselves stuck in a true conundrum, a situation so implausible it should not exist, but does. One thing is absolutely clear, however. As Harry said, without equal opportunity for all, we will never be able to dig ourselves out of the Groundhog Day hole we now grovel in.
One of the best documented strategies for improving racial and ethnic tensions involves the creation of opportunities for positive equal status interaction among people from different groups. These strategies are most effective when they organize cooperative activities to ensure that people from different backgrounds can contribute equally to tasks involved.
Harry and I understand this and all the other important things that simply make sense. We choose, consciously, to view each other in the same manner as unsighted people do, by listening to and respecting our words, as well as appraising our deeds in life. The fact that Harry is the Polaroid opposite of me in physical form has nothing to do with who he is in my mind as a human being. Just putting up with or tolerating someone else that doesn't look or sound like you is what we call in law a complete non sequitur, a non-solution. Until each and every one of us is able to teach our children how to hear through that all-seeing blind man's eye, we will continue to pick the wrong sides. And that, my friends, will lead us as a country to no good end. Going backward into the caves is not the way. We need to be blind to race, starting now.
Thank you so much for listening to me. And I know that you will join Bob and I in trying to make the world better for people no matter their skin tone, their gender, their nation of origin, their sexual orientation, or their religion. I met my wife, Miti Aquino, in the Philippines, and 2 of our 3 children, Zoe and Miggy, are proud Filipinos. Salamat sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay.